like a scratch ticket for the lottery, except you already know that you're gonna win. Like everybody and their mother's dog has made this year. I have really apparently enjoyed doing 2x2 ribbing. It's like varsity knitting or something, I don't know. Hi and welcome to Black Dog Knits episode number 7. My name is Delaney and today I'm taking you through some of my recently finished objects as well as some of the things that I have on my needles, and then I have a few acquisitions, so I'll be discussing those towards the end. And then lastly, my friend and I will be hosting a knit along, so if you're interested in that, I will also be discussing some of the details about that. So let's get started. Today I am wearing my Eva cardigan, which is a pattern by Petite Knit, which is very popular. I think it has over 1,000 projects on Ravelry, and I, like many other people, was very gravitated towards this project, especially in the beginning. I think it was one of the first patterns that I saw when I really first discovered Ravelry and Petite Knit, that I saw it and I was like, I really want to make that pattern. And so I made one about a year ago, and I used the wrong yarn, I think, as well as the wrong gauge, and so I ended up frogging that project. But I still really wanted to have a cardigan of my own to wear, and so this was my first project of the new year. And I knit this cardigan really fast. It took me a week to finish, which is kind of crazy when I think about it, but I was just so excited to be able to wear it, and also I really love the yarn that I chose for it. And so I can tell you a little bit more about the project. As many of you know, or probably know, this is a DK weight pattern, and the suggested yarn is Peer Gynt. And so when I initially made this cardigan, I didn't understand the importance of really knowing the yarn that's used as the suggested yarn or what's knitted in the pattern sample. And so I chose a superwash merino wool, which is a DK weight yarn, but it was a lot lighter of a DK weight yarn, and so I ended up having to size up my needles, and then it just ended up not working out the right way that I wanted it to. And so for the second time around, I knew a lot more about the importance of pattern gauge or knitting gauge, as well as really understanding and using a wool that was going to be similar to what the suggested yarn was. And so the yarn that I chose for this is the Kelbourne Woolens Scout yarn, and this is a 100% wool yarn. And I think until recently, it really wasn't known what type of wool was used in this yarn, but I was looking at their website and they did say that this is a blend of Corriedale as well as merino wool. And so it's quite soft, but it still is a little bit more rustic than just a 100% merino wool. And so when I chose this yarn, it was back in the late summer, early fall, and so I hadn't knit a ton with wool, and I was really interested in trying it, but I didn't want to choose something that was super rustic. And so I ended up choosing this yarn, and I didn't really know what project I was going to use for it. But then when I was thinking about kind of some of the patterns that I wanted to knit, as well as the wool that I had in stash, I decided that this would be a really good wool to use for this project, and I'm so glad that I chose this wool. This is the color Ocean Heather, and if you've seen any of my other episodes, you'll know that I love the color blue. And so a lot of the things that I knit are in blue, and obviously this is blue as well, but this is a little bit more of a greener blue than I usually go for, and I think that it's a really nice color. It's a little bit darker than I had initially thought about when I was thinking back to what I had in stash, but I think it's going to be a very versatile piece. Like I said, and like many other people say, petite knit patterns are quite timeless, and so I really feel like I'll be able to wear this with a lot of different things for a lot of different occasions, either formal or informal, and I just am very happy with it. It is I think the kind of main signature of this pattern is the 2x2 ribbed button band, as well as there's a 2x2 ribbed hem, which I won't show you right now because I'm sitting and it might be a little awkward for me to get up, but I will show some footage of me before I blocked it as well as after I blocked it, so that you can see how nicely blocking really transforms the 2x2 ribbing. And so this is knit actually in a Petite Knit Junior pattern. I had initially knit this pattern for my niece, and I found a size within that range, towards the upper range of the sizes in the junior pattern, that would actually fit me as well. And so I decided, instead of buying the adult version, that I would just use that. And so I believe I knit the size 11 to 12 here, or 12 to 13, something like that. And it's meant for somebody who has a 78 centimeter bust, which is what I have. And so I just followed the pattern as it went and kind of tried it on as I was making it. And I did accidentally end up doing an extra round of increases, but I think that the pattern, or that the sweater, the finished sweater, fits quite nicely, and that there's an appropriate amount of space, like kind of in this underarm area. Before, when I initially made this sweater or this cardigan, the armpits after I blocked it were like way down here, and it was just, it was beyond drapey. It was just not the right fit. And so I'm really happy with how this turned out and everything. And I have really detailed notes on what I did for this pattern on Ravelry. So if you're interested in kind of understanding any more details that I did with this pattern, you can feel free to go and look at the project notes that I have for it. The only modification I made for this is that I did 3 inches of 2x2 ribbing, and I think the pattern calls for like 2 3/4, so whatever. But more significantly, what I did was I really like to be able to roll up my sleeves without them falling down, so that I can do dishes or work or whatever. And so I, instead of using 3.5 millimeter needles for the cuff, I used 3 millimeter needles, and this ended up being like the perfect size for the cuff. And I can very easily roll this up, and they stay up, and so I'm really happy with that as well. So I am super happy with this cardigan. It's a little bit of a different color, but also not super surprising of a color, and I'll be wearing a lot of it this year. So that's my Eva cardigan. And then my other finished object was actually my last finished object of 2024, and if you've seen my Everything I Knit in 2024 video, just like everybody and their mother's dog has made this year, I feature that there, but I will talk about it a little bit here since this is a regular podcast. This is my Monday sweater, and I knit this using actually the yarn that I had initially used to make my Eva cardigan last year. And so this is a 100% merino wool. It is a superwash wool, so it's really soft. This is like the softest wool you will ever find. This is a Manos del Uruguay yarn, so it's a really nice yarn. It's yarn that my mom really kindly gifted to me for Christmas last year. And so I had really been wanting to use it ever since I frogged my Eva cardigan. And this fits quite nicely. Everybody raves about the Monday sweater, and I had made one before as well, but for other reasons that didn't fit very well. Luckily, there are a lot of people in my family who are of all different ages and sizes and whatever, so I can gift sweaters or whatever that don't fit me. But I had made another one. I really liked the fit of it, but then I wanted to make one for myself that actually fit, because that one had shrunk. And so I followed the pattern as it calls for, except I think I did fewer decreases or increases for the raglan increases, just because I didn't want it to have quite as much positive ease. And I think other than that, I think everything was about the same. I think the sleeves, I don't know why I wasn't paying attention, but I didn't really pay attention to the intervals of sleeve decreases, so I just kind of did my own thing. And the sleeves are a little bit wide on this. I would have liked them to be a little bit tighter, but they're in no way disproportionate to the sweater itself. And the only thing I will say about this pattern is that, at least in my experience, I do feel like the neck is a little bit wide when I put it on. Like, I was hoping that it would fit a little bit tighter, but I've seen that you can put elastic in the neck to help with that. It's not something that I think I'll do with this, but if I do end up making myself another one of these sweaters, which is somewhat likely because this is just such an easy and great design that you can make, I might consider adding some elastic just to help kind of bring the neck in a little bit more to what I would like. But this is my other finished object and my last finished object of 2024, the Monday sweater by Petite Knit. And so I swear I won't only talk about Petite Knit this year because I want to try other designers and support other designers. But I did feel like it was a good way to start off the year simple and predictable with some Petite Knit patterns. So those are my two finished objects of the day, but I have one whip that is almost finished, so we can move into whips now, but it is not quite finished, so I'll categorize it as a whip for now. So for my mom's birthday, which was in October, I told her I would make her a pair of colorwork mittens. Now, I've never done colorwork before, and so this was a commitment that I had made with both enthusiasm and also a little bit of, I was a little nervous because I hadn't done it before and it just looked so complicated and, you know, whatever. So I told her that I would make the Sweet Nectar Mittens by Tanis Fiber Arts, and so I'll put in a picture of the sample pattern here so that you can see. And I finally got around to making her these mittens, and I worked on them over the holiday break, but I haven't done the lining for them, so I'll show you what I have so far. These are the mittens, and if you can see, I'll hold it up closer. The way that these mittens are supposed to work is that they have a hummingbird on one hand right here, and then a flower on the other. And so when you hold them together like this, it's supposed to look like the hummingbird is drinking from the flower. And I will say that I think my color work is okay. This was the first time again that I've done color work. It is a little bumpy. I haven't blocked these yet, but for my first time doing color work, I was pretty excited about it. And it was really, I know other people have said this, and I have a friend who does a fair amount of color work as well, and I've heard it before, but I've heard that color work can be kind of addicting just because it's also like magic like blocking, where it's just kind of like things just appear as you're making them. And so I made these mittens, I think, in 2 days because I was just so intrigued and excited by being able to see the pattern come to life. And it was kind of like, you know, like a scratch ticket for the lottery, except you already know that you're gonna win. So that was really fun. And I think I ended up having extra yarn for this. I used, this again is kind of coincidental, but I actually used Manos del Uruguay yarn for this as well. My mom has very sensitive skin, and so I had her choose the yarn for this so that hopefully it doesn't bother her skin. And so I used their Sami line for the pink color and the color Peonies, and the Marla line in the colorway Denim for the bird and the flower. And so I'm happy with how they turned out, and I have extra of both of them. It only used, I think, about 40 grams of yarn of each color, and so I think I'm probably going to make some more pairs of mittens using the leftover yarn. But before I do that, I want to block these, and I'm actually seeing my mom this weekend, so I'm going to bring these down and show them to her and see how they fit her hands. Make sure they fit her hands before I use the yarn for anything else. One thing that I've noticed not many people, at least from my experience, really talk about in podcasts is how they block color work. And so I'm a little worried to block these because I don't want the colors to just run all over the place. So if you have any tips or tricks on blocking color work, I would love that. I talked to some people at the local yarn store about this, and they had recommended using color catchers, but again, like I said, my mom has kind of sensitive skin, so I'm hesitant and cautious to introduce any new kind of like cleaning things, or like any new chemicals into while I block these. And so another thing that I also have seen is that you can soak your yarn before you do the project, which obviously I didn't do, but you could also soak the finished object in diluted vinegar, and I need to look into this a little bit more, so that you kind of set the dye. It's kind of like fixing. If you ever do like science stuff, it's kind of like fixing. And then you block the mittens so that the colors don't run as much. So that's kind of my limiting step right now in terms of these mittens, but it's something that I want to get done soon. And then also, these mittens are supposed to have a liner in them in fingering weight yarn. These were knit and DK weight yarn, but then it has a fingering weight lining for them to make them extra warm. So that is why these are not really considered a finished object, but this was really fun. I definitely am doing more color work. I cannot wait to do some more color work. I really want to do some color work sweaters. Something that I didn't appreciate about color work is because this is stranded color work, because it's stranded, it's got this extra layer of fabric, and so they're extra warm. And so I'm thinking that this winter it would be really nice to have some color work sweaters, because it is very cold where I live, and so anything and everything that has a little bit extra warmth is much appreciated at this time of year. So yeah, I will come back with you or to you with these finished and update you on how I end up blocking these, how that goes. But just for now, this is my Sweet Nectar Mittens by Tanis Fiber Arts. Okay. Next, I have another kind of small project, and I am working on a hat for a family friend. And so this is a family friend of ours for a long time, and they have been so kind and generous to let us stay at their house at times, like many times. And so the least I could do is make them something knit. And so one of them asked for a hat, specifically a dark blue, light blue, a white hat. And so I went to the knitting store yesterday and bought some yarn for this hat. So here are the yarns. This is all Peer Gynt. These are the yarns. This is dark gray blue, this is blue heather, and this is bright white. And these are all Peer Gynt yarns. And it's nice because these all come in 50-gram skeins, and so I don't feel like with a multicolored hat that I'm going to end up with odd amounts left. Now this is the amount of yarn that I have left of the dark blue, which is the one that I probably will use most of. And so I have about 20 grams of this left, but I'm anticipating that I'll have a fair amount of these left since I'm only doing like 3 inches of stockinette. But I'm just making him a kind of like a classic beanie with this. This is what I have done so far. And I did a 2x2 ribbed brim, which I'm going to fold over so that it has an extra layer of warmth. So it's gonna it looks kind of funny right now, obviously, because it's not sewn, but it's gonna be more like that. And then I'm going to do an equal amount of the light blue, and then I will finish off the hat with white. I'm not following a pattern for this. I'm just kind of doing this out of my own head. But I cast on 96 stitches, did 2x2 ribbing. I have really apparently enjoyed doing 2x2 ribbing lately, and then started, and I'm just doing stockinette stripes. And instead of doing decreases like equally around in quarters, I think what I'm going to do is design it so that the hat, it will be kind of like when you're doing toe decreases for a sock. And so I'll decrease on either side of a stitch so that the hat kind of goes up like this, and then I'll Kitchener stitch up the top of the hat once I've decreased to a certain number of stitches, which I still haven't decided on yet. But this is my beanie for a friend, and I think it's gonna look really nice. I think he didn't choose these colors, but he asked me which colors he wanted, or he told me which colors he wanted, and so I think that this color combination is gonna look quite nice for a hat, and hopefully he likes it. Hopefully it's not too itchy for him. Peer Gynt is a little rustic, but we'll see. They're nice enough to let us stay in their house, so I may as well make him a hat. Okay, my Next whip is something that I wanted to make again for a long time. When I first looked at Ravelry, obviously it's like an explosion of patterns, and so you are just, it's endless, like the possibilities are endless. But there were some patterns that I saw initially that I was immediately like, I want to make that. This was one of them, and then what I'm making right now is another one. So this is, it doesn't look like much right now because I'm not very far into it yet, but this is the Eun Sweater Light by November Knits. I'm working on the yoke right now, and this again features 2x2 ribbing. So yeah, I guess I'll have to like break a streak on what I'm doing 2x2 ribbing on because there's been so much of it lately. But this is a pattern that she released this fall, but initially she had a worsted weight version of it called the Eun Sweater, which is very well known. I don't know if it's her most popular pattern, if it's that or the Sunday sweater that she made, but this is a very popular pattern of hers and perhaps one of her signature patterns. But she released the Eun Sweater Light, which is a DK weight version of it, and so I figured that I would make that. And it features this 2x2 ribbed collar, and then you continue on in the raglan increases. It's a raglan sweater, and you maintain this 2x2 ribbing for the raglan increases, which I think is very elegant. And this is supposed to be a very oversized sweater, but as I've voiced before, this is not something that I love. I don't really want to wear a super baggy sweater. I think that it can be very cozy, but I don't find it very practical, and also just on myself, in my own personal opinion, I don't find it very flattering on me. I think it looks very nice on other people, but I just don't like the way it looks on me. And the other thing is that this pattern, it only goes down to, I think the smallest size it might be 85 centimeters, an 85 centimeter bust, which is a fair amount larger than what mine is, and so I am kind of using a lot of the motifs in the pattern, but also modifying it heavily so that it will be more fitted for me and fit me a little bit better. And so I am kind of doing this as I go, but I'm adjusting a lot of the numbers in the pattern so that it won't have quite as much positive ease. But so far, I am loving making this sweater. This is also a really special project because I'm using Knitting for Olive yarn for the first time, and this is actually yarn that was very, very kindly gifted to me and hand delivered to me by my friend who went to Copenhagen, and she picked out merino as well as soft silk mohair for me. I told her which colors I wanted before she went, but it's really special to know and think that she bought this yarn in Copenhagen at the flagship store. And so the colors that I chose for this, surprise, surprise, are blue. But I chose for the merino a deep petroleum blue, and then for the soft silk mohair, this is dusty petroleum blue. And so together, these are them, and in the fabric, this is how it is turning out. So I hope you can see that nicely. It is looking a little bit grayer in this lighting, but it's a nice blue, and I don't think it's obviously marled because the colors are different, but I don't think it's super marled, and I think it's giving off a very nice look. And I've actually never knit with mohair. Well, that's a lie. I did try making something with mohair, but it was a disaster. So this is like this will be my first finished garment with mohair, and it's been really fun to use such a fluffy and light yarn. And I'm a little intimidated by using it just because I feel like that's like what the advanced players use. It's like varsity knitting or something, I don't know. And so I'm trying to be really careful to make sure that I always get every stitch and have mohair with it. And so that's been kind of a fun new thing that I'm trying out. But I am very excited both for this pattern as well as this yarn. And I told my friend, I was like, I think you're gonna get me hooked on something like this. Is kind of dangerous. I feel like I'm definitely gonna want to buy a lot more Knitting for Olive yarn after this. And I think that is the case. One thing I was a little worried about was that I wasn't sure if my skin was going to be able to tolerate mohair, and I was really worried when I was making the collar for this. I kept on like holding it up to my face and being like, oh, I wonder if I'll be able to wear this comfortably. And so I was holding it up and I was like, oh, it is kind of scratchy. I'm not sure. Knitting for Olive silk mohair though is supposed to be like one of the softer ones. And so when I finished the collar, it looked ridiculous. It probably looked like a dog collar, but I actually put it over my head and so I could wear it around my neck and just make sure that it was going to be something that would be comfortable. And it's actually not that bad. I think it will be quite light and quite nice and quite fluffy. So I'm very excited to have this, and I am hoping that once I get through the yoke, this will kind of tend to fly off my needles and I'll be able to wear it soon. Oh, the last thing is that this pattern is, I think, known for, it has a really high split hem. And so that's kind of what I was really intrigued by. So that is something that I will obviously be incorporating into this as well, even though it won't quite have as much positive ease as what the pattern calls for. I will definitely still be doing that really dramatic split hem on this. So stay tuned for that. And that is my other whip of the day. Now for my acquisitions, one of them was this Peer Gynt, which I got, but the other one is this Cascade 220 superwash wool that I bought. This is yarn from my local knitting store that I bought in the color charcoal, and I bought this yarn with the intention of making the coffee shop sweater, which I'll put in a picture here so that you can see what that looks like. Maybe it's called the coffee run sweater, but this is a sweater that is in Veronica Lindbergh's most recent book, Knits to Wear, which my husband very nicely gave me for Christmas. And it's a very elegant, it also I think has, I don't know if it's 2x2 rib, but it also has ribbed raglan stitches. And so I will be making this sweater for a friend of mine. She has very kindly watched my dog and will continue to watch my dog when I am out of town, and so she won't let me pay her, so I told her as a payment I would be happy to make you a sweater. She didn't want to choose one, so I told her, or she said it would be great if it would be a surprise, and so I am surprising her with the sweater. Her birthday also is coming up, and so I figured that I should get yarn for that sweater, and she wears a lot of black. So I hope that this charcoal is still neutral enough for her. I think it's pretty safe. But I wanted to choose something that wasn't going to be a chore to take care of, and also that wasn't going to be too scratchy. And so I chose a superwash wool. Supposedly you can put it in the washer. I am always hesitant about that, but I'm going to try washing a swatch and see how that works. Also, supposedly you can put it in the dryer. That is even more precarious to me, but I will report back on my experience with that and see if that ends up being a feasible option. But I feel like giving somebody a sweater that can go in the wash but that then just needs to lay flat to dry is not too much of a chore or work. I will say this is superwash wool, and I was surprised that it wasn't quite as soft as I was anticipating. It's softer, but it's definitely not the softest superwash wool that I have felt. So hopefully also it's soft enough for her to wear. She said that she wears anything, so hopefully this is soft enough for her to wear. But yeah, those are my finished objects, my whips, as well as my little bit of acquisitions. And then lastly, what I want to bring up is that my friend and I, so my friend Lizzie from Knits by Lizzie, and I will be hosting a Staffin knit along. So Rebecca Clow just released her Staffin sweater vest cardigan mega bundle, and I was lucky enough to participate in the test knit for the Staffin vest, which I will put a picture of that here. It was a very fun test knit. It was challenging for some reasons, but that was in a previous podcast and you can see that if you want. But it is such a pretty pattern. It's a little different, but not crazy different. And all the texture in it I think is really engaging. It's a pretty big gauge. I think it's a 16 stitch gauge, and so it goes pretty quickly. And after I finished the vest, I was like, I want to make the sweater. And so then I was talking to my friend and she said, oh, I really want to make the sweater too. So then we were like, oh, we should knit it together. And then we were like, oh, we should have a knit along. So anyways, we will be hosting some sort of knit along, I think between January 15th and March 15th. She, I think, is going to post some sort of poll on whether or not people are interested in it. And I know that Rebecca Clow is having a pattern release sale right now, so if you are interested in the pattern, now is a good time to purchase it at a discount. And then we will hopefully be able to gather some knitters up to be able to make this pattern all together. And it is such a fun pattern. It really is, I think, a really great pattern to kind of dive into textured knitting. And kind of classic Rebecca Clow has put this whole slew of patterns together so that you have an option of making a vest, a cardigan with either a round neck or a v-neck, and also the classic pullover, which started it all. And so I am pretty sure that this knit along that we're having will just be a Staffin knit along, so you can choose from whatever it is that of her pattern choices that you want to make. But I wanted to bring that up because that is something that is brewing right now and that we will be hopefully putting together in the not too distant future. But for now, that is all I have. I hope that you enjoyed the podcast today and that you got some knitting done or were able to take a nice little break. And I will hopefully be back with more updates soon. If you like this podcast, please feel free to give it a like so that it can reach more people. And also, if you're not subscribed and you'd like to see more content, I would also really appreciate it if you would subscribe. So that's all for now. And for now, I will wish you happy knitting and a nice weekend. Bye.